completely into a whole field of dots and then reappears as you tilt it forward again. That's a nice effect. While the king, wearing a crown, a strange looking crown, his crown seems to get bigger and smaller as if it's sort of throbbing or something, I don't know. So this is a brilliant little deck, and I've even done something funny with the actual pack it comes in. For instance, little dots, little holes there. That's the back of the cards. While the front of the cards, we've got the Joker, rather abstract Joker. As I tilt him back and forward, you can see him trying to get out of jail, the Joker in jail. So this makes a beautiful game of cards with an animation all the way through, and every single card does something quirky and strange. I'm thinking of playing a game of Snap, for instance. Huh. Are you ready? Endless London, it says. Wow, what's all this? It's one of these landscape games where you have to put the cards in different orders, and any of the orders is consistent. So let's see how they've done inside. Wow, we've got 4 stacks, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in each. That's 16 cards. And the box says a billion, not a million, but a billion combinations. So if we take a stack here and lay them out, the point about these is you can put them in any order and it makes a consistent picture. It's rather nice here. They've got a little sort of pavement, a little curbside going along the bottom end. But if I didn't want that, I could put this piece over here, or I could put this piece over here or something. But another feature of this, which I haven't seen in these dioramas, is that they have a back as well, which is also, again, a different picture. So you can reverse them and have, I don't know how many combinations there are now, an enormous number of them. So there's a whole series of extraordinary scenes from London, many of which are familiar to me as I go through them, because I've been living in London now on and off for 50 years. Parks and pubs, black cabs, bus stops, all very familiar to me. A bit of Soho somewhere over there, I think, too. Oh, there's a nice tree in bloom, and a cat in that. Oh, yes, that's nice. Oh, look at the London pillar box, too. That's good. So as you lay them out, you realise you've got a huge number of combinations. Let me just swap that piece around with that and turn that one upside down. And oh, look, we've got a fish and chip shop there. That's good. What's on the back of the fish and chip shop? Vintage shoppers. And somewhere I found one with some curry in it, too, a curry shop. Lay them out, and we've now got a very large scene. Sorry, bus number 141 is not in service today. That's a shame, isn't it? London buses, which I go on quite frequently. The York, that's a nice pub, and I've been to a pub called the York. And there we have all the cars laid out, a complete panorama of London. My goodness me, look at that. What a beauty that is. And the fact that you can turn any of the pieces over and still make a consistent picture is quite remarkable. Something that I've never had with these. I call them various polyoramas and myrioramas, just endless landscapes. But this is obviously going to be a nice one for winter evenings. And we can reorganise London now the way we want to see it. Well, I've lived in London so long that I've seen many, many changes, but now I can do a change a minute if I want to. Let's change that piece over there, for instance. For long winter evenings, what else can you do but reorganise London? How many combinations can you find? Ooh, an Acme duck call. They use them in orchestras. But I've adapted it with something that a member of an orchestra mentioned to me. You put a kind of slide in it, like a swanny whistle, and it acts on the diaphragm on the reed and makes it higher and lower in pitch. And that's the subject of today's toys, ducks, and their noises they make. One of the first I came across 40 years ago was this charming little yellow wind-up duck, which has got a most singular motion of the head. As it goes forward, it darts. That's exactly what ducks do when you see them in the water. They have this darting action with their necks. Very, very charming and very realistic too. Hold on, little fella. The Japanese have done some funny takes on ducks. Here's one which they produced many, many years ago with a little squeaker inside. The squeaker's in the hat. Here, this bit here. Makes a squeaky noise. And then you can slap it on your hand too. And another very, very pretty version they made was this one here, which as you push it down the back, the beak opens and it squeaks. Superb. Almost too good for kids. Then there's executive ones. This one here, which squeaks very slightly, it's like a little devil. And this one, which when you bang it, it lights up. There's a little flashing LED in it. Very nice effect. Ducks, but they don't think you use them in the bath quite for those ones. Then going back to kids' toys, here's a charming little wind-up one from probably Tomy, or might have been a Hong Kong company. When you wind him up, the mother duck takes a little ride and takes all the little ducklings with her. And there's one at the very back who's the last tail end Charlie. Very sweet. And they all have a slight rocking motion as they move too, which I think is sweet. Very nicely done. Well done, those ducks. Here's a nice little thing. It's a blue egg, or supposed to be a blue egg. Let's see what's inside. There's a zip. Oh, yes, of course, it's a duck. What could it be except a duck? It's almost like a finger puppet. If you put your hand in, instead of zipping it up with your hand, you can make the duck move and do its actions, which is rather sweet, isn't it? Very nicely made. A duck coming from a blue egg. I wonder what species that is. For baths, of course, for kids, they love brush. This is actually a nail brush, but it could be a scrubbing brush. And to go with the bath, you also have to have soap, of course. And this particular soap has got a duck inside it. There's the duck. And when I turn it round gently, you'll see the duck head coming into position. So when the soap's all finished, the child has got a little plastic duck to play with at the end of it. It's very charming. I've also made ducks in the form of coin banks. This is a nice one. You put a small coin on the tray, push this thing down, make it clicks, there we are, and then release. Ooh, and another one. Coin on the arm, at a speed. Ooh. Push the arm right down, and then release. Ooh, superb. I love that action with the beak. This is something you can have in your garden to tell that there's someone coming up the path. It's got no motion whatever to it, but it has an electronic device inside and batteries. So it sits in the path leading up to your front door, and when there's a little motion sensor here, when someone walks up the path past it, it goes, and it tells you someone's coming to visit you. A little duck with a motion sensor, almost like a doorbell, but we'll have to turn him off, otherwise he'll keep making a noise. The first year I was at Nuremberg Toy Fair, I think it was, I came across this wonderful duck, all tin, and believe it or not, this is, what, 30, 40 years ago. It's still available, and they still sell them at the toy fair. Extraordinary. It hasn't going good speed, and then he really goes off, takes off. And put that the other way. And now we'll send him off for a ride. And the last item, of course, is the duck umbrella. I adapted this slightly because there was a plain handle on the end, but I thought I'd put a duck on the hand. I find this from another umbrella. And now when you open it up, this is fairly well known amongst kids nowadays, it opens up into a duck. But I do like a bit of movement on the beak. You know, I love automata, so I discovered just accidentally, if you half close it and move this piece up and down, this is the effect you get. All about ducks. So what have we got here? Endless New York. That's nice. A box with, the familiar endless landscapes. You put these cars in any order. Well, I love New York. I go at least once or twice a year. I've been there many, many years, and I'm going to see how many scenes I recognise. That's going to be my favourite thing. This is New York by night. So here's my favourite two scenes will be the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building and the Flatiron Building next to where the Toy Fair used to be. And I think that one is, oh goodness, oh yes, that's Washington Place there. The point about these, though, you can put them in any order and still make a consistent picture. But the other feature of this set of polyoramas is you can turn them over and you have another whole complete scene there. Look at this. Every one of them can be turned over. So the number of combinations is, well, they say on the box 1 billion. I wouldn't be surprised it's more than that, to be honest. So let's make arranging New York for the first time. This is putting the cards into any order, and it makes a consistent picture all the way through with a sort of pavement running down the bottom edge of the card. And as you push them across, the landscape or the panorama of New York gets more and more extended. Oh boy. So much happens in New York at night time too. There's some things I've seen cafes working at 3 o'clock in the morning. The city just never sleeps. It's extraordinary. There's a good start, and if I want to start rearranging pieces, well, it's easy to do. Or swap that piece around with this piece, and so on. So here's New York for you to reinvent as many ways as you like, and see how many scenes you can spot from well-known landmarks of New York. Endless New York. Endless fun, I think. The magnificent flying machine. What a marvellous monster this is. A bit of cardboard engineering taken to a very high level. What's the amazing thing about this is there's no glue involved. I've made a kit myself, and it's true. The company's called Totally Glueless, which is a lovely name for it, I think. But it is true to say that there's no glue involved in it whatever. There's a man behind doing all the pushing, apparently. Well, he's been pushed actually into pushing. And the wings in the front, and there's a Clarabelle, I think is the name of the chicken in the front. And there's a vein at the back. There's an extraordinary amount of detail in the thing. Take a few hours to construct everything, but what a lot of fun this would be. Let's try my middle finger, that's better. There's so much movement going on, so much detail, so many things happening, and an extraordinary amount of artwork gone into the design with all sorts of bits and pieces. We have spent a long, long time looking at all the little, almost fussy details that's been put into it. It's really a magnificent bit of engineering, let alone the name of the magnificent flying machine, but it's been a lot of fun to do, I should think, and something I'm looking forward to making myself. Magnificent walking machine. What a marvellous bit of cardboard engineering this is. I spent a very happy day or so, spread over 3 days, to construct it. And it's got all sorts of extraordinary features. This is Clarabelle the hen. Popping out of the hat sometimes is Darwin, who's supposed to be a cat. And there's teapots here which go back and forward, there's gears. The amazing thing about this thing is it's constructed without any glue whatever. That's why the company calls themselves totally glueless. That's a nice pun. But that's true, there's no glue here whatever. It's all done by very, very clever design, just pushing and shoving and putting things in place. It comes in a box like this, and in the box there's 15 cards, 9 of which are very, very thick cardboard indeed. Those really form the gears and the very important bits. So this is really stiff card, and then, or 6 of those, and then there's 9 of these which are quite flimsy, but they add all the decoration and the body of the man himself. And then a huge sheet of instructions, which is like a giant poster, which goes on and on and on. But it's full of very, very helpful, detailed information about what you're doing. And I say it was a good bit of time, but I did do engineering at college, so I'm very well aware of how things go together. I'm just amazed at how strong cardboard can be when it's pushed in certain ways by a good designer. It's got the strength almost of a piece of wood, or almost metal, because some of these things take a lot of strain, and yet it's happily accommodating it without any hurt, and it'll go on for many, many years to come. Very challenging, but tremendous fun to do. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. You can go back in again now. The marvellous, magnificent walking machine. A Christmas card, well, more like a Christmas toy. There's a place at the back to write your message, of course, but it's more like a box. And the reason is there's a motor inside. It's a motorised Christmas card. And the thing that's going to move is a ballerina. He's going to perform the Nutcracker for us. Let's have a go. We just push the button to switch it on. Off you go. Oh my. Animation. Who respects with animation? You're supposed to move it up and down, then it really does work. This is a wonderful effect, this, but to show you I must get it in front of the camera and then you'll have a go and see how it is. You need a light like this, which is my own little personal light. It'll work actually with best with Christmas tree lights. And when you look at the light with the specs in front of your eyes and move it up and down, you get this extraordinary animation effect. It looks like a shark, but with a little tail going up and down, flapping as if it's swimming through the water. The 3 positions, the shark's fin is up, then it's in line with the body, and then it comes down again. Wonderful effect, this. They've only ever done this once before, American Paper Optics. The trifocal is quite a rarity. So that's a shark. Well, here's another shark, while I'm on the subject of sharks. This is it's called Chomp. Something nasty in its, oh, it's a foot, it's a human foot. Horrible. And when you squeeze it, it's even more horrible because the foot starts to come out. Disgusting. Chomp the shark, he's called. He's obviously having his lunch. Roast leg of an insurance agent or something. So these are the first 2 items in our Christmas pack for this year. This is the 2016 Christmas pack with 12 items laid out on the table. Very nice selection too, and very varied selection this year too. The second and third one I want to do is these equidot balls, where you've got 2 balls made of wood and you spin them fast. And if I get it close to the camera, we'll get a lovely bit of procession going. That black dot now goes round anti-clockwise. Extraordinary action. What's happening is it's rolling like this and also precessing at the same time. So you get this wonderful double action, which is very extraordinary. One more time. The fourth item is a dice. Well, it's a double dice. Well, it's a quadruple dice, I think. There's 3 dice inside and there's a dice on the outside. But it's one of those multifunctional things, because on the bottom is a bottle cap remover, lifter. And when you look for the 5 and press the button here, you'll find it lights up, which is a bit of fun too. So you can see exactly what the dice you've got score inside. Then you press it a few more times and it goes through a program and turns off. So a multifunctional dice. This is a brilliant little tracker toy magic trick, which a lot of my friends have recommended. It's a very simple one where you put it on your finger as a ring, and that sword, the plastic sword, goes right to the middle of your finger. How does it do it? Very, very clever, simple secret, and well worth practicing. Another slightly puzzling thing is this thing here, which is supposed to be a key fob. You put a key on the end, and you've got a coin inside, but hang on, you can't get the coin out because there's a row of ball bearings, and they're stopping the coin from coming out of the slot. How do you get it out? There's a very simple, clever secret. Nice bit of physics too. Have to work it out. Another one which is slightly puzzling is a chain and rings. So you've got to bet the ring on the chain by dropping it down, and somehow, by doing something rather clever, get it so it attaches to the bottom of the chain. How do you do that? It's a very clever way of doing it. Needs a lot of practice. Very hard to do more than once, I find. I need to practice and practice. But it's a clever little party trick when you learn how to do it and you get friends to try it out. I do love balloons, and there's two very nice balloons this year. This is I think my favourite large balloon I've ever had. It's a 9-foot monster. It's made of plastic. You can blow it up according to their instructions, just to run around the room with it. But there's a much cleverer way of doing it with just 3 breaths and 20 seconds, and you blow that entire balloon up just with your own lungs. Astonishing thing. 9-foot giant balloon, mega balloon they call it. And the other balloon, which I like very much, is this little minor one, which you blow it up, and then it's got a rather nice scene of a tiger in a cage, and you can twirl it like this. It's got a stick when it comes to it. And just to be a little more helpful, because I like taking these things around to parties, we've included in it a little patent device, which, well, not patent, it's my own idea of how to deflate the balloon. We include a little gadget, a very simple one, to deflate the balloon, and then you reinflate it as many times as you like. So it looks very pretty when it's done too. We also include a greeting card. It'll be one or the other of these 2 greeting cards. These are nice pop-up cards by Courtier Fine Art. I think it's one of the best card designers in the country, and we're going to include one card or the other. There's also Worm in the Apple, which is a very fine puzzle where you have to get the yellow worm out of the apple, the green apple. Quite difficult. It's sort of like a maze. You have to move the worm round and round in different directions, and you get dead ends and it gets jammed. But eventually you'll find you can get the worm completely out of the apple. Clever one, that. Just for a bit of fun, I'm including a quiz that I helped to compile this last year called the Body Quiz, where you have to work out 33-letter words, English words, for the parts of the human body. Very nice idea, that, and a lot of fun for parties, making it go with the swing. I think my favourite item, though, of this year's Christmas pack is this magic flower, I call it. It's a blooming flower. It looks like nothing in particular, but when you open it up like this, you realise you're looking at something which has got a very nice design to it indeed. But there's more to it. You can open it like that. You can also open it like this to make it into a nice curve. And my favourite bit is opening up this way, like that, and then you start to manipulate it. That's very pretty. And when it comes up, it's very pretty. Very nice effect. That's quite nice. Close it up again. A little bit of magic here now. If you open up the first way again like that, and then knock it hard, this is the effect you get. Wow, that was astonishing. How do we do that? So that's my favourite, I think. So we've got 12 items here, very varied selection, some instructions to go with it for this year's Christmas pack. I think you'll enjoy it very much. The contents are highly entertaining. Merry Christmas. What's this? Wow, an energy stick. When you touch the ends, the current goes through the body and it lights up. Lovely sounds, wonderful LEDs. But you can do better than this. You can get friends to hold it in a ring, and when they do, the current goes through them. So I'll ask Hendrik, one of our team, to hold the top of it. They'll hold hands. When I put my hand onto George's, wow, there we are. The current's going through 3 people now. Is that astonishing? We're all joined up thinking this. There's some say that you can do up to 50 people. Imagine that in a room, sitting in chairs, all holding their hands. When the last person touches it, it'll light up. Amazing. Bit of participatory. It's playing our tune incidentally, but I think it's a funny tune. Anyway, try it for Christmas. It's a wonderful, wonderful gadget. Wow. The 13th of October is Ada Lovelace Day. She was the daughter of Lord Byron. In fact, she was the only legitimate child of Lord Byron about 200 years ago, and she was reckoned by many to be the world's first computer programmer. So I brought along some of my mathematical toys by way of celebrating and as a tribute to her life. The first one is one she would have been familiar with because this appeared 200 years earlier. This is Napier's Bones, a reproduction of it, an extraordinarily simple way of calculating difficult numbers. For instance, if I want to calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 12,345, and multiply it by 6, for instance. I take away the other bones, these would be bones, which I don't want in the way, and then I just go across this line here. I need a bit of paper just to write down the numbers. I start off with a 0 here, and now I add up on the little diagonals here, these two numbers together. You can see how the lines diagonal come down. 3 and a 4 is a 7, so I put a 7 next to it. And then I've got 2 and an 8 is 10, so I put a 0 and there's a 1 to carry over. So the next lot is 1 and 2 is 3, but with a carryover it becomes a 4. And the last two figures are 1 and 6, which is a 7, and finally a little 0 at the end. And I then look at my bit of paper and find I've got this number here. I can cross out the first 0, it doesn't count, 74,070, and that's the answer to that calculation. What a brilliant little piece of work. So that's something she would have been familiar with because at that time it was already available. Here's something that I came from across in my own childhood, which was the calculator that came out in the 1950s for adding up numbers. It was actually for pounds, shillings and pence, this one, but I'll just use it for simple calculation. If I want to add up something like 7 and a 5, that's 75, it appears in the thing, then add to it something like 6. Now the 6 is a red one, so it has to go up over the top and round the corner into the next column to make hundreds. 6 and a 3, and that would be the answer. And when I want to move on to the next calculation, here's the way I erase or cancel button. Beautiful, simple bit of mechanism. In addition to that, though, they also included in this version, which I didn't have in the one I had as a child, a slide rule and an ordinary rule inside that, metric and imperial. Very clever. The slide rule I did have to use a lot as an engineering student in my day, so I can remember that when I set up the 1 and the 2 here, for instance, 1 and the 2, here's the 2 times table. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 7 is 14. You have to watch out for the decimal places and make sure you can work out what they are. So a very clever little calculation machine, but it's principally used for adding up on this side here. It's a calculator. So she would have been familiar with that. Here's a simple one which the Japanese company Wonder Company of Tokyo produced in the 1980s as well. It's simply a times table, and you rock it back and forward. Children would use these as a ruler at school, but if you want to say what's 4 times 5, just flick the ruler. Oh, there's the answer, 20. What about 8 times 7? Flick the ruler. Oh, there's 56 appears in the window. So as you're rocking the thing back and forward, it's giving you the value of those two pieces, those two figures multiplied together. Maths is often used for sort of practical jokes and fun and magic. And here's a lovely example of a magic set of 6. Little pieces of 6 with very specially arranged numbers so that you ask a person to add up those four-figure numbers, 5,349 and so on, in their head or with a calculator. But immediately, even before they even picked up the pen, you can say it's 28924. How can I say that? Well, there's a trick to it. I do one more just to show that I can do it for anything. 4 figures, 2,977 plus the other 4 figures, quite a big number. I immediately say the answer is 23867. How do I do it? I can't tell you. It's a magic trick, but something very, very clever going on there. Another one looks like a magic trick, but actually is a very clever little calculating machine. Consul, the calculating monkey from about 1911. This used to be an old biscuit tin shop, I think. And all you do is put his 2 feet there along the bottom line and say we want to multiply 4 by 9. 4 and a 9, and the answer in the box where he's holding is 4 9 to 36. Or let's have 2 times 11. 2 times 11 with 22 in the box. Very clever. So a very simple little mechanical motion thing which allows him to produce the answer to simple 2 figures being calculated and put together. I like practical jokes, and these two came out, one just after this had been invented by Clive Sinclair's first calculator, was back in the late 50s. This came out in about 1960s, I think. When you push the buttons, ooh, yes, it squirts water in your face. There's a tiny little mechanism inside, which I'm afraid is not very kind, water inside, and when you squeeze it, leave it on the desk for someone to try, they get squirted in the face. A more sophisticated version of a practical joke is this one here called the wrongulator. So with this one, you turn it on and you say cheerfully, let's multiply 8 times 2 equals, 11. Now that's wrong. The answer is every time you press the 11, the equal sign, then and only then it takes away 5. Exactly 5, no more, no less than 5. So you don't want to press that because it'll take away another 5 and another 5. The wrongulator, leave it on the desk and drive your friends mad. This is the most sophisticated version of a pocket calculator I've come across. It's just a delightful bit of mechanism. As you squeeze it, it's also tilted with the time. It does this lovely action. Slow motion, that's beautiful. Look at it on the sides. The mechanism is just superb. Isn't that beautiful? And then when you finish the calculation, you squeeze it up, put it in your pocket, and it's done. Superb. Here's something that I just wanted to show because it's not a calculator as such, it's something that gardeners use nowadays for a bit of calculation, I suppose, geometrical calculation, but it was invented, we think, probably as more 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. The Egyptians would have used it. It's the old 3, 4, 5 triangle. If you've got a flower bed and you've got the grass, you want to cut the flower bed and make a very, very clear corner, you have something here which has got 4 units, say 40 foot, 4 tens of 40 that way, 3 tens of 30 this way. Then you must make sure there's 5 going this way, right up the knot. And when you've got those ropes nice and tight and you put pegs in the ground to make sure they're really tight, here, just here, you have a very, very precise right angle with long bits of string. That's of enormous help to gardeners who are trying to lay out gardens and make them look very, very neat and so on. So exact right angle produced by a 3, 4, 5 triangle, produced perhaps about 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, a long, long time ago. It was a very, very old invention. And the last item is something that Ada would have been familiar with. It's a way of putting in data into a computer. And she and Babbage, who she knew, was thinking of using something like this to be able to put data into their computer machine that they were trying to invent. And I think because the 10th of December is Ada's birthday, it's the bicentenary of her birthday, I think it is, we ought to see what happens if we put this particular piece of card with all the little holes in it into our little machine. The point about this lady was she wasn't just interested in numerics. She did realise, which Babbage didn't, that you could use something like this for something much wider than just figures. You could use it for poetry or art or music or something. Well, let's go. This is a musical box, so we'll see what it would have done. Oh, yes. Happy birthday. That's her tune, of course. How fitting. Happy birthday, dear Ada. Love, hate, mirror has no colour. What a strange thing. It's a funny looking mirror too. This is actually a memo pad with a very clever little optical device in the top. When you open the first page of the memo pad and line up your eyes exactly, you should see the word love appearing there in red letters with a white background. It's coming from this side of the page. But without changing your field of view, the next page should produce the word hate, H-A-T-E, but in green. And then they repeat the thing but with different colours, just to convince you that there is love on that side and there's hate on that page. And then they play around a bit. For instance, this one's got no coloration at all, but if you put your hand here, you'll get one word, and if you put your hand like that, you get another word, the other word appears. And then they mix the colours up a bit, which is rather nice. Have a bit of yellow in the background for love, and a bit of colour in the background for hate. And then it repeats itself. This one's got a more sort of mellifluous colour arrangement, but I think it's love again, and it just is, it's a nice little merging of the colours. And then it repeats itself as a memo pad. It's a most ingenious idea, because the angling of the mirrors, of the little pixels of the mirrors, is what makes it work. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. Love, hate, a mirror has no colours. A memo pad, though. A combination lock for the bicycle. For people who don't like numbers, this has got words instead. It's presently set for the word lock, L-O-C-K. You can reset it just by putting the hasp to that position, getting a coin to turn the screw thread, and then set to any word you like, 4-letter words, no root words. And then when it's reset, turn the little piece back, and it's set for the new word. And it's a nice idea for people who have bicycles and need to lock them up, but don't like numbers, they like words. Clever. So I've just come back from Canada, where I found this, and I had a lovely time there, finding all sorts of extraordinary things. In Ottawa I was, including this scarf, for instance, which, when you fold it a certain way, what they call a crimp fold there, and then a crimp fold here, all those bits at the back there forms two words, puzzle, P-U-Z-Z-L-E, and then around here, a very whipsy-wopsy P-A-R-T-Y, puzzle party. That's what I was in Canada to do, to attend a puzzle party and find little gems like this. And two of the other puzzles I found was this one here from Stephen Chin, who I've known for many years. He set us the problem of finding a way of balancing the egg on a point, which I've now, after a lot of effort, managed to solve. So I'll unsolve it. Just turn it over. There's a heavy ball bearing inside, and when you try to set it on its point, it absolutely will not sit there. So I've now got to find another way of getting it back into its point again. Very tricky. Took a long time to solve, but I should enjoy that again. And the other puzzle I want to show is this little box. It's made in France. The idea is to get the pieces in the box so that it's completely level at the top. The pieces are these rather nice little sort of half tetrahedron pieces which form pyramids like that. To put them in the box, you do a curious thing. You put the square piece against that edge like that, slanted, and the other piece next to it, that, and the third piece like that, all very symmetrical. The last piece, though, has to slide in underneath the others, lifting up the other piece as it goes. So you just put it in there like that, and that took me a long time to learn. Looks easy now, but I sweated over that one. Then other curious things I found, for instance, this is a box of matches, quite normal looking matches, red heads, but safety matches. But amongst them was this curious match, which obviously was a mistake in the factory. It's covered in this rather fierce burning chemical which helps to light the match, and there's no way you could light that without burning your fingers. Perhaps it could be a practical joke, but it's a bit too wicked for that. You need to wear asbestos gloves. So I'm keeping this as a souvenir because these are perfectly normal matches, but once in a million times you'll get a curious accident in the factory where that comes out, and you can't use that because it's a non-safe safety match. Strange idea. Here's an optical illusion which I picked up from a friend who bought it from Japan. Two little nut dishes. We've got the bigger blue one near you there, and then a green one at the back. But the curious thing is, if you change the order, some reason or other, the green one's grown and got bigger, and the blue one's shrunk and got smaller, or so it appears. Change them around again. Oh, we're back to where we were at the beginning. A large blue and a small green. And as many times as you change it over, the size keeps appearing to disappear or appear, one large and one small. Very interesting optical illusion. Here's a very strange item. It's a kind of what's it. It's got a curve to it. It's got two very sharp blades inside, which you can hardly see. The idea is, this is very curious, sometimes when they're trying to promote coffee, they put little hidden numbers under the rim here, and you win then a meal or a trip to the moon or something. But how do you get at it? It's very hard to unravel these. This is the device you use. So you carry this in. When you finish the coffee, you push that down, with the coffee now empty, pull it, it cuts the piece either side and allows you to read what's on that bit of the rim. And eventually, after you work through the entire cup, that's what you get. But you can look under all the bits and find out whether you've won the extra meal or the trip to the moon. Bizarre looking thing. Who would have guessed it? I would never have. Another little find. Here's a charming little Japanese version of the missing area paradox. It's supposed to be a little cat bag for taking the kitty cat to the vet. But there's no room for it. You can put him on top, but he'll fall out. So what do? You just take the three pieces apart. There's only three pieces, the whole thing. You put the kitty in the middle, that's where she belongs. And you put the two pieces either side. And somehow, as if by magic, she fits in the bag along with the two pieces. So there she is in the bag, ready to go to the vet. Isn't that strange? That piece goes that way. Ooh, ooh, ooh. There. There's Kitty in the bag. Same size bag, but how did that fit in when it was completely full before? Don't understand that. Well, there's a missing area paradox. There's a secret to it which I won't give away. Here's a very strange material. This is made by a friend of mine for his Christmas card. It's made of a curious type of coating called hydrophobic. And when you get water on it, it does not want to know anything about water. It resists it. Put a drop of water on it, and you get this extraordinary effect with the balls rolling around, rather like mercury, or rather like, get one in the corner, get it to merge. There we are, it's merged. And we can add more to it if you want to. Let's have a bigger ball. Wonderful stuff, isn't it? To actually solve the maze, you'd have to have a much smaller ball, and then with any luck, you could probably take it to the maze. To get rid of it, all you do is dab a handkerchief on it. It immediately wets the handkerchief and comes off the paper. Extraordinary. It's a normal paper, but it's been coated with a special material which gives this wonderful performance of hydrophobia. Then this is something a friend of mine found in the New England Quilting Museum. What they're doing in Quilting Museum, I can't think. These are very, very strong rubber suckers. Put one on there and clamp it, put one on there and clamp it. And now I could just about lift up the table, except I'd make a bit of a mess if I did. He's suggesting I should try and walk up a skyscraper, you know, a glass wall building in New York, using these clamps going up, and I think I can do better things in my life. Get up the first 10 feet and down I'd go. So that was Canada. And of course, as I left Canada, I had to get some moose droppings. Everyone can have moose droppings. They're delicious. Have you tried one recently? Let's have a go. Yes, that's a moose dropping, all right. Delicious. You should try some. They're great. What's this? 2 bits of plastic? Very strange. Well, the answer would be in the packaging. That's what it is. Diamond Engagement by Scott Elliott. He's a brilliant designer of this stuff. You've got to put those two pieces together, and they're both symmetrical, in such a way that they form an ace of diamonds. Seems easy? It's not that easy, actually. It took me some time to solve originally, but I've just about got the idea now. So a little twist, and there she blows. An ace of diamonds. Wow, what a lovely puzzle. For a diamond geezer, of course. A bear, a nice big cuddly bear. Well, you could cuddle it, but this one is for playing music with. A well-known tune and others. What a nice idea for a kid to take to bed. A nice, soft, cuddly bear, and they can play tunes until they fall asleep. Nice one. Also battery operated in this little collection of bear toys are these ones from Japan. Very subtle, these ones, though. You just push the little arm down and the head moves back and forward. We'll see if the koala does the same. Yes, they do. The clever bit of design of this is where's the battery hidden? Very obvious place. It's hidden in the present, which they're holding. That's where they hold the little AA battery. What a lovely idea. Turn them off, you lift up the right-hand limb and they turn off. The most advanced of the battery-operated ones is this one here, which has the most wonderful action. Little switch at the back, turn it on, see what it does. That's an amazing one. The amount of movement it's got, and almost chaotic movement, is extraordinary. A bear in a teacup, dancing away. Fred, you're wonderful. That's his name, incidentally, Fred. Good bloke. Here's a rather rude bear, I'm afraid. When he makes a rude noise, he's apologising for it as well. You squeeze him. Oh dear, it's one of those rude raspberries, they call it, don't they? And as you squeeze it, he's making the noise. Yeah, well, he looks apologetic, doesn't he? Pardon, pardon, he's saying. The Russians love bears, of course. It's one of their national animals. And here's a lovely folk toy with two bears, one dancing and the other one playing a drum. And it's got the usual ball swinging underneath, like with the pecking hens, which is another favourite craft toy from Japan, from Russia. It's a lovely, lovely Russian simple folk toy, that. I'm very pleased with it. Here's a curious one. Home Sweet Home, it says. Looks to me like a dustbin. I'm sure it's a dustbin, but it's a soft plush one, so what's going on here? Well, put my hand in underneath, and then we suddenly find, oh, up pops the bear. He's been living in the dustbin. And it's a glove puppet, because you can manipulate his little arms like that and make him rub his nose or clap the hands in glee. When he's asleep, he goes back into the dustbin, and that's his home. Home sweet home for a bear. Here's a very strange bear, very far from being soft and cuddly. It's made of bristles, like they use for cleaning bottles and toilet pans. Very large bristle here, but superbly crafted to make it look like a polar bear, but brown. And then there's smaller brushes underneath, again, strong wires holding them together for the limbs. A wonderful bit of sculpturing in that, but hardly for a child. Just a very nice thing to put on the mantelpiece. And the last one is bear parts, a marvellous idea from an American company. But here's the limbs, but where's the rest of the bear? Oh, well, he's already been assembled on a jar of honey, of course. What else could it be? So the idea is to put the head on first, and then you can use the jar of honey. Just by unscrewing the lid, you can get at the honey. And then you attach these little limbs as well. And it claps its hands in glee. Goodness me, so many bear toys, and I've barely scratched the surface of it. Tea time, 4 o'clock, my favourite meal. In England, we do like our tea on time. So I pour the tea, stir it, intrigued by this little gap underneath. What can it be for? It's a nice little mug, but why the gap? Well, of course, I always like a biscuit with my tea. What a sensible place to put a biscuit. So you haven't to have a separate plate, doesn't it? Keeps it all in one place. And then when you drink it, there it is. And pick it out. I do wonder whether left-handed people might have trouble with this one, though, because they would hold with left hand, and as they tilted the mug forward, the thing would fall out. Perhaps that's why I found it in a charity shop. Someone couldn't cope with it. They were left-handed. But the idea's a nice one. So I looked around for some other designs, and I came across another one. A mug, pour the tea in, and this has also got a space for biscuit. And rather nicely, they tell you what it's for. Biscuit pocket. I'll put it in. Problem here, this is chocolate, and this is quite a warm surface coming in there, so I have to drink this tea fairly quickly, otherwise the chocolate will melt. But it'll do, it'll do. Delicious. I do love tea, don't you? Here's a well-known cartoon character dancing away, a little bear. If I hold the base, it'll go a little bit better, I think. Spins very nicely. A toy I bought in the 60s, a long time ago. When I presented to the children, what I do is play a little trick on them, turn the lantern over, and now the magnet's at the top, not at the bottom. So when a child did that and let go, it fell down. They had to learn to turn the magnet over, and then it will stay upright, and it'll perform a little dance for them. Oh, it's too high now. And away he goes. So these are teddy bears, and that's probably the first one I got in my collection of toys. The first teddy bear, and all the rest of them are examples of teddy bear toys. Some of them were quite cute, but again, some of them very old ones. This is one from a German company. It's been there for many years at Nuremberg, and when you wind it up, it does an action like that. The tail at the end makes a bit of vibration, off-center weighting, so the thing vibrates and starts moving around. But I love the idea of a little blue balloon made of quite a dense plastic, I think. It's at the top. And then one for the Far East, over here, goes a bit mad. It's supposed to be a mother pushing its little baby in a pram, and again it's holding a blue balloon. Japanese, I think this is. Mother and baby going out for a ride. And then another German toy over here. Very gentle one. This one you just wind it up and she's knitting. Does a simple little action like that. Very slight, very small, but just a little gentle movement. The company made a lot of very nice little soft plush wooden toys in the German market, and I found this at Nuremberg sometime in the 79 or 1980 when I first went there. Here's a much later idea, a bear and a can. There was a large can, I had to undo the top and then undo the bottom, and find inside, you're supposed to try and release the bear. When you take off the base, there's a teddy bear inside. Wow, he's released. And you've got a little badge to say, I freed the teddy bear. Poor thing, he's a bit flattened now, isn't he? He needs to be sort of puffed up a bit. There's a cuddly bear for you, and that fits inside the can. Very neat. One of the earliest automata toys I got was this one here, which has had many, many years of use, and I haven't touched it for about 30 years, so when I put batteries in it, nothing worked, I'm afraid. The idea was a nice one, though, because you put water in it, and the water went from apparently into his mouth, but it's actually down his arm, came round here, and he refilled it with the thing. The point about these old toys is I keep them, because sometime I shall probably repair them, but they show they've been well loved by kids. If they're in pristine condition, no one would have played with it, no one would have laughed, no one would have enjoyed it. But as it is, it's a well-battered toy, been played with lots of kids over 20, 30 years or more. Now it needs repair, so I shall do some of that. This is one of the Am toys from America from about 20 years ago. It's a flip-flop toy. It's supposed to be a bear one side and a monkey the other side, I think it is. I'm never quite sure which is which. They both look so similar. I think they're supposed to be a monkey. And you flip it over, and it's a bear. So you can flip-flop between the two. Very sweet, very cuddly, very plush and soft. A nice idea from Am Toys. Then there's one here which I bought originally as an executive toy for people in offices. The idea was they're supposed to pull the base where there's a little mechanism here, a very simple one, it's just mechanical. And it, oh dear, I can't hear where it's heading now, yeah. And a bit more. What it said to me all those years ago, I heard it so many times it's gone to my head, was, you're on your way to the top. Or, you're a winner, Teddy knows. There is nothing you can't do, and so on. So I did that for some time. Then as the record wore down, I stopped using it as an executive toy fun and turned it into a little parachute bear. The point about this is I came across a lady artisan who was making small parachutes for children to be able to make their little toys parachute down. So I took it up on a kite, and this came down, and the kids clapped their hands in glee, and if they give me their toy to drop down, I gave them a certificate which said Air Bears, and I gave them a gold star because it was a good bear. And of course you shout things at it as the bear's descending along the field. Keep your legs together, and then roll, 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 and all this stuff here. But that was a great success as a little thing for children at parties. The main trouble is you need the right conditions for that. It's got to be a big open field, it's got to be nice weather with plenty of wind, sun, dry, etc. And that was fairly rare to find those conditions. But when it did, it was just marvellous. And the last one to show is one of my many umbrellas. The only one I could find which was a bear. It's actually a panda bear. Well, that's near enough to a bear. It's a bear family, isn't it? So there's a panda. If I take it down a bit like this, I could probably get my head underneath and make it talk. Wow, I like all that rain out there. Here's our flux skill set. 3 items. There's a heavy neodymium iron boron ball, which is a very, very powerful magnet. It's trying in a bit under the table, it wants to stay there. Then there's 2 aluminium tubes, well, hardly tubes, they're very, very thick walls, almost like chunks of the stuff, very heavy, but this little bit of rubber on the outside helps it to hold them. As with Lenz's law, when you pass this through, it goes very slowly and slows it right down. But with a set of 2 of them, you can have some juggling skills. You can pass it down and it'll go down this one, and then you've got time to get down and catch the next one, and so on. Or you can pass one of these to a friend, and between you, you can make the piece go back and forward. Or you can make it go down 2, which is a lovely effect. Very slow, look at that. Long weight, you can't believe it. If I just check that the gravity is normal here, yeah, that's normal dropping. But look at it going through the 2 tubes, astonishing. That's a really long, and of course you can make it go forward the other way and make it really slow, but it's quite fun just to make it go vertical. So this is a marvellous demonstration of Lenz's law, but it's combined with juggling and apparatus and demonstration and a lot of other things. I think it's a wonderful way of demonstrating Lenz's law and enjoying your science. The Levitron Ultimate. It's a lovely beast, this, but a tricky one to master. So a few people have asked us, how do you go about it? And this is my way of showing how to make the Levitron Ultimate work. It really works, it'll do for any of the Levitron series. Unpacking the box, you find instructions, which are worth looking at. And then the beast in the middle, it's got the strong magnets, and around here are the other pieces. These are the little levelling devices which keep the top absolutely level, and that's one of the 2 tricky things you have to learn to do, is twiddling things to make it level. This is the monster that's going to actually float in the middle of the air. It's a very strong magnet and very remarkable. It'll hold on to those very firmly. And these are the weights, and the last piece is the main job itself. Is a big circular ring magnet sitting in here. Oops. And immediately the top's being attracted to it. So the first thing to do is just to keep the monsters at bay, is to take the pieces, and where there's 3 holes around the outside is screw them in. I do it all the way to start with, because then when you find it's not quite level and no table is completely level, you need to be able to slowly unwind them, and that'll lift up that corner where the top's misbehaving. So I screw all 3 in, and that really is about all you need to do to get it started. So it might be on a very level table, perfectly level field, but in fact you'll find there's very slight differences. This piece goes this way up, incidentally. I don't know why they've made it with a dimple. Perhaps that's for the packing purposes. It sits there very nicely, but for working it, that's going to be upside down like this, and it's going to sit on the top. You're going to lift it up with the right weights, and magically it's going to lift up a tiny bit more into a sweet spot about there, and there it will stay for at least 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. We can play tricks. That's the aim we're going to do. They don't suggest very clearly in the instructions, but I always find the best thing to do is to overweigh it to start with. Put all the weights you can onto it, so it's overweighted, so it won't lift up into the sweet spot, and then you can slowly reduce the weights. I'll put quite a lot of these weights onto it and see if we can get it to stay down to start with. There's weights here which are, I think these ones here, the big ones are 3 grams. There's the large discs. These ones are 1 gram. The red one is 0.4, I think it is, and the others go down and down and down. The only one they don't give a weight to is this little ring here. They give you a spare one as well. You only need one of them. That's the last piece that goes on, which sort of snaps into position, and that holds the whole piece together. So that is now a heavily weighted Levitron top. And with anything like that, won't actually rise in the air. Then we turn this upside down in here, and you could almost try spinning on a table to start with. You must learn to do a spin at a certain speed. You've got to learn to do it's actually, I think the stability point is something like 23 revolutions per second or something, but it's something you just learn to do by doing it again and again and again, and finally eventually you find it behaves itself. So a bit of spinning off the sweet spot to start with is a good idea. Oh, anyway, I'm lucky. Then we're going to lift up, and we'll find it won't actually rise up, I don't think, any higher. No, it's not. And it's going that way. So immediately you can stop doing the weighting for a minute and start paying attention to to the levelers. This one's got to be undone a little way so it moves further out, and that means this is going to lift up a little bit by a fraction. So I'm going to do about a turn and a half like that. So I'm not doing anything on the weights at the moment, just trying to see if I can get the thing roughly level. That's just about okay. So now we stop thinking about leveling, we start reducing the weights. I'm going to take off, well, I'll just be gentle and take off this one here, which is 0.2 of a gram, I think it is. See if that allows us to bring it into the sweet spot. There's still a lot of ballast on that piece. Put it up here again, another spin. That often happens with me. I find if I spin not quite hard enough, it doesn't take, and it doesn't want to stay on the top. There we are. That's okay. No, it's too slow. It's got to be quite a fierce little spin. That's nearly there, actually. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take off the next largest weight of the heaviest weight, which is this one here. These are a lot lighter than the brass ones. Take off that one. I think I might put back on one of these just to get it a slight reduction, because I think we're getting close to the optimum weight. In the middle, give it a good twist. I don't think it's quite level yet. It's starting to come towards me, suggesting that I've got to make a few adjustments. Yep, that means I've overdone this leg here. I'm going to wind it in a bit. By winding it in, it's going to go from that position to that position, a little more level. And I'm also going to take off another of the weights, because I noticed it still wasn't rising up into the focus zone, or whatever you call it, the sweet spot. So now we're down to, well, we've taken off quite a bit now. We've taken off a red one and one of the greens, and we'll see if we're getting close to the optimum weight. And whether it's going to be level or not, the other good. Yes, that's almost in the sweet spot. It just is a tiny bit too heavy. It wants to come down again. So it's quite a small reduction of weight now. That always has to come off every time. The other red one comes off, but leave the brass ones on. And I might just risk it like that, actually, because there's a fair, at least 1 or 2.1 grams either way of it, and it's still happy to sit there. So there's a window. It's not so critical, the weight, as you might think. And it might be just about level too, with a bit of luck. Now there we are. It's whipped up in the air, and it's coming over here a bit, so I need to push that, undo that a bit, which is going to tilt it upwards that way, but a fraction of a second, just by a little bit like that. And it is actually, it's a bit buoyant. I think I'm going to put in one of the very small ones I haven't yet used, one of these 0.1 of a gram, just to push it down a bit. There's a sweet spot from about there and there. It'll sit there and suddenly punch down and drop down, or there's a bit where it's too high and it falls away, and you've got to find somewhere in that middle there where it just sits there very happily. Let's try that. And it rises up into it. Now it's coming out this way. And I think it's still a bit too light, actually. I'm going to take off the yellow one and replace it with the green one next weight up. I've got a feeling with these ones, the magnetic force is influenced by the temperature, and if there's a change in temperature in the room, if it's cold, the magnetic force is stronger and the thing will rise up with much heavier weights, and vice versa. So this one might be changing in temperature a bit with the people's bodies and lights on and things. Oh, that's about it. That's about level. It's starting to punch down. It's almost as if it's going to punch down to the bottom again. No, not quite. I think it's just about there. Let's have a bit of magic, shall we? Woo! Isn't that wonderful to see it happen? And after it slows down, at a certain point it'll start precessing a bit, and then bump, it'll drop down, bump, and sit in the base like that. Woof! That was a lot of fun. It's all set now, but for this particular temperature. If there's a slight change of temperature in the room, you'll probably have to start again. Overweight it to start with, slowly reduce the weights and reach that sweet spot. But there's a bit of practice needed first of all. I think probably the trickiest bit of the lot is on the table, just practice doing lots and lots of that spinning it at a good speed. It's got to be really quite a strong speed to get it into that 23 revs per second or whatever it is. That's probably the hardest part of it. The rest of it is just persistence. It pays. Ah, a Newton's cradle. A lovely executive toy for the desk. Invented 30 or 40 years ago and still available in all sorts of sizes and shapes, but it's using ball bearings, in this case suspended on little fine nylon strings. And all these toys here are basically ball bearings, but some of them showing interesting physical principles, but also a lot of fun as well. It's interesting to see the typical sizes of balls used of this big portfolio. We've got the biggest one which we use is a 2-inch ball bearing. That's a 1-inch. That's a 1/2 inch, and that's a 1/4 inch. But of course, there's about a factor of 8 between these two, almost a tenth. This is 8 times heavier, 8 times more volume than this one, and then an eighth and an eighth. So it goes up very, very rapidly in weight and in volume, and the amount of metal that's in them. The biggest one is something that we've had for some time now. It's a way of demonstrating how the energy of motion can be turned into the energy of heat. Just by putting a piece of thin paper in between and banging them hard, the energy of motion, woof, and then strong smell of carbon of burning, because it creates heat as it hits the piece. With small ball bearings it wouldn't work. You need really heavy mass, and then you get this marvellous conversion into heat. One of the first ones I came across in this genre is this one here called Rush Hour, which is a whole lot of ball bearings. It's very small ones, about 1/4 inch or less, in a sort of ramp, a series of ramps in a box. And when you set it going, you get this marvellous motion of people dashing back and forward, and they give it the name Rush Hour. That's very, very descriptive, isn't it? Everyone rushing up and down escalators at tube stations to get to work. Makes a nice noise too. As you can see, it's getting quite scarred from all its uses. I've had that for 40 years, that one there. Also at this time I picked up a very curious little thing here, which is fairly harmless. It's just a piece of wood but with a ramp in it and ball bearings in it. And when you turn it upside down, they go down the zigzag. Make a pleasing sound, a bit like a rain stick actually. Put it on the table for volume. Ah, much louder, very nice. But that's about all it does. Make it go a bit slower by putting it at an angle, but that's fairly limited. And also, this is about the 1970s I picked up these things. This curious little thing here is a ring magnet and a heavy ball bearing, about 1 inch or a bit more. And the idea is simply to put it on the equator there and turn it round in the hand and do an action like that. It's quite therapeutic. It's a nice feel for the hand. I expect the magnetic force does good things to your circulation and all that stuff, but I don't know about that. But it's a nice action to sort of fiddle with. And also at the same time I bought another one which is a bit more mysterious. It's just 2 balls on a spring, and you can wrap it around your finger and you can pull it and push it not too much and make it go whap, whap, whap like those clacker things, and so on. It's fairly harmless and appeared sometime in the mid-1970s, but nice. 1990s I came across this very nice little device which they have in China, which is healthy balls, in which you've got, they're not fully ball bearings, they could be heavy ball bearings, but they make it a little bit more customer friendly by making them hollowed out and having little noises inside. And the idea is to turn them round and round, and it's good therapeutic exercise for your hands. Then there's a number of puzzles produced typically by my friend James Algetti's company Pentangle over the years. And there's so many items out there which are ball bearings in little boxes like this, which are skill toys. The idea in this one is to try and get the ball bearings which are in the bottle there, as it were, as if they're supposed to be liquid, and you've got to get them into the glass below without spilling a drop. And of course, it's very difficult to do that. I'm not sure I'm going to get even one of them going. You need to do it at a very shallow angle. I haven't got a single one on the glass. Oh yes, I've got a few, but I've shaken them in. But the idea is to tilt it and get all the ball bearings going from the bottle into the glass. Very tricksy. Also, at the same time, this Pentagon company produced this little man, the Sick Man. Nice little blurb on the back. And the ball bearing in this case is being kept here in his tummy. And we lift out the little plug to release it. There's the ball bearing. And the idea is it's a maze, a tricky one too. You have to put it in the mouth. You probably never see it again, but what you're supposed to do is get it through the maze, which is all over the interior of this, and get it out through his ear, and perhaps that will cure him of his ills. I don't know if I've ever cured mine, but that's the idea of it. So it's a little maze puzzle. But a very curious use of something which is not a dexterity toy. This, I think, was just a prototype. I don't think it was ever produced, but the idea is to use it as a dice. It's got 2 ball bearings, it's got 2 races where they can go in. What look like cards are actually values of a dice from 1 to 6. The idea is to give it a good shake and then pause and see where the magnets which are lying underneath each of the cards have come to. So there I've got a 2 and a 5. Another shake, and you've got another version of it, another. Take it off there and you can see it more clearly. The idea is to have one ball bearing inside and one outside, and there's magnets under each of these little cards here to give you a value. That was, I don't think it was ever produced, but this was a prototype which I received back in the 1970s as an idea for a ball bearing. The Gaussian gun, which has been very popular over the years, involves 3 ball bearings and 2 very strong neodymium magnets. And when you push this down, it whaps, sends it off. In the original version of this, though, it was actually done on a circle, and the idea was you set the thing going, and the first ball bearing went round and hit the little bunch again the second time, and of course it's a bit of a much slower impact. But the idea is it did 2 circuits round. You could do that with this device. Just put around a heavy bit of material which is in the form of a ring around it. But the most spectacular is obviously this initial one, when you just have the piece coming down, and this comes off at a tremendous angle, at a tremendous speed, and it's called a Gaussian gun. Another one with prototypes which were slightly different to the original was this one here, which is the hurricane balls, where 2 ball bearings are welded together. They don't need to be, actually. I've tried one with 2 ball bearings and a little neodymium magnet in between. But the idea was this is to speed it up, blow on it, and you shine various lights in it, and you get some beautiful light effects. But here's an early prototype which never caught on. It was ball bearings. It had to be done on a flat side. It had to be spun like this. Very curious, because the central ball looks as though it's completely stationary, but it's actually rotating very rapidly, and the other balls appear to hold little rings. Very strange. The chap who made this for me, a physicist from Germany, made another version with a large and a small ball, which was, again, interesting, but never quite catch on. Now here's a very nice toy. It's planet balls, comes from Victorian times, 2 ball bearings with attachments to them. I think they're taken from Newton's cradle. Elastic band in between, and they unwind, and then with a bit of luck they wind back the other way. And on a good smooth surface you can get 4 or 5 reversals with this thing. 2 ball bearings which make a planetary system, 2 ball bearings back and forward. Much more sophisticated is the atomics, which has appeared about, again, in the mid-70s, which is tiny ball bearings, very, very well contained in a piece of plastic which had to be made to very high tolerances. You've got to have very, very precise size of cell inside, near to the nearest thousandth of an inch. And the effect is that it shows, for crystallography students, what happens at atomic level. You're getting voids and fault lines appearing. But an interesting thing, which is a side effect, which is not intentional, is that because the ball bearings are so small, and this is plastic, it's creating static electricity at the top here. So the top, as it were, is boiling off. I don't think that occurs at atomic level, but it's a wonderful demonstrating to students of crystallography what's happening actually down at atomic level with the voids, the little round blank bits, and the fault lines. Another useful ball bearings, which is a very subtle bit of physics, is a heavy ball bearing here is in the base of this wand, which has got sand, and when you turn it upside down, the ball bearing sits at the top, and you turn it upside down, you think, well, it's going to stay down there, whatever else you do, because it's so much heavier than the sand. It's not so. When you shake this, a lot of times, the ball bearing will slowly climb its way up to the top of the sand and appear at the top, which is a very subtle bit of physics that Martin Gardner wrote about and made quite a very interesting piece of correspondence. And then we've got a beautiful item here called an ocean drum, which I think is one of my favourites. It's got thousands of ball bearings inside, big drum skin, ocean drum, and it makes the most wonderful sound of the ocean. Yes, it's just like the surf coming up on a sandy beach. Wonderful stuff. So ball bearings are used for an astonishing variety of toys and effects. Many of them are very interesting physical principles as well. But there seems to be no end to the amount of ideas that are coming out using the ball bearing. Can you think of some? What have we got here? A copper tube? It's very thick walled if it is a copper tube. It's more like a block of copper with a hole going through it. Very heavy. Got a nice suede band of grey to help you to hold it in your hand. You need that because it's a good weight. Comes with 2 other pieces in a box called Field Flux Original, along with a little pouch and some blurb. The interesting bits are these 2 pieces here, though. This is just a stand so that you put it on your office table ready to be played with. When you want to play with it, put the stand aside, and this is the interesting bit, these 2 pieces here. It looks like a piece of metal, but actually like steel, but no, it's a neodymium iron boron ball, quite heavy, and with an immensely strong magnetic field. See what happens now if I pass it through the copper. It slows right down, almost as if it's crawling through that hole. There's a very strong eddy current is going around the copper tube and impeding the progress, almost as if there's thick treacle inside there. If you look at it from above, it's even more remarkable. You look right over it, you can see the ball going down at a very, very slow pace. And once it's on the bottom, it drops quickly. So it starts off and drops slowly and then crawls through that hole, simply crawls through it like a snail. Amazing stuff, how slowly it goes. And then you can do various acrobatics with it. You can make it pour it out from the front, and you can pour it out from the back. And if you can juggle with it and make the thing up and down, there are several very nice little games you can play with it. But for that, you need to practice, preferably over a table with a cloth on it, or best of all, outside on the grass, where when it drops to the ground, it won't shatter the ball. It's an astonishing version of the Lenz's law effect. It's almost as if there's a whole lot of treacle in there suddenly formed. It just doesn't want to go any speed. Oh, it dropped through. What a bit of magic. Phew. Spiders' webs. They're very pretty, aren't they? Decorative, of course. But on the table here, I've got a whole series of devices I've collected over the years and also borrowed, which help to get rid of insects which are not wanted. Spiders, flies, mosquitoes, ants, just anything. Some of them are a little bit silly. I've never actually done this one. It looks grand. It's a sort of gun thing. And the idea is to wait for the insect to alight in the middle of the target, which is impossible. Then you pull the trigger and whap. I've never yet caught an insect with this. Hopeless. I suspect that the air, as it's coming forward, pushes the insect out of the way anyway. But the idea is just a bit of fun. Good noise, too. And another one, again, I've never actually tried using this, but if you whacked an insect hard and then you kept a score, you can keep a count here on the handle. It shows you 1 up to all the way up to 20. When you had 20 insects, you made a score. That's good, isn't it? So every time you whap something and you manage to dispose of it, you whap it with that. A little more sensible. There are, if you've got an unwanted beetle here, for instance, there's 2 very nice ways of getting rid of them, but harmlessly. This is like a pair of scissors. You place it over the unwanted insect, and you close the pieces up, just by together like that, and you lift it up. It's entrapped. You can see it inside. Take it out in the garden and drop it gently in the bushes. Hopefully still alive. Or another one with a similar idea is this one here. When you squeeze it, rather like salad grippers, it's a little compartment in the middle there, with a bit of cloth at the top which stops it from crawling away. And you place it over the unwanted insect and squeeze it and tilt it back. It's held inside. You hold it like this, take it out in the garden, and again you can drop it and you get rid of it. Oops, like that. Then there's a toy which I quite enjoy. It's the sort of thing children would like doing, which is really supposed to be a frog eating a fly. There's the frog's mouth, here's a fly, you've got to catch it. He's on a long bit of cord, so whoop it up in the air and then, ooh, that's nice meal for the frog. Lovely little thing, and it's a simple thing for children to play with. Amongst the sensible items in this collection are one I've used regularly in the garden when I'm sunbathing and I'm being plagued by mosquitoes. This is a battery operated one, and there's little wires here. When you push the button, this light comes on, and those are now charged up 100 or 200 volts. So when you just wave it through a whole swarm of mosquitoes that are pestering you, it gets rid of them very, very quickly and very effectively. Another one which we use in the office if we got flies or We've got cobwebs up on the ceiling. We're using extension. It's a low-powered vacuum. So if you've got a little fly here which you want to get rid of, whether it's dead or alive, just place it over the fly. It draws it up. You've got a little cap. Turn the thing off, and then out in the garden, and you can put the fly out in the bushes there, dead or alive. So those are the sensible ones. Here's a nice jokey one which I've had for many years. It's invented by George Costanis, who I see in New York every year. It's a kind of gun with a fly swat on it, and if I lay it across the table that unwanted spider, we might get rid of it. Ooh, try once more. Whoa, he's away. Equally jokey is this thing here which calls itself an official mosquito trap. These are designed exactly like man traps for trapping poachers and things. The idea is a mosquito lands on this little plate which then triggers and snaps and catches the mosquito by the leg. This goes on to say you can make fur coats from it. Well, you need a few million mosquitoes there, I think. It's a bit of fun, really. It's not intended to be serious. And also a bit of fun here is something which is something that does happen in nature, the way that these Venus flytraps catch flies. This is just a little battery-operated version, so not a fly, but a flying penny put on it, and it drops in, and yum, 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 how delicious. And the Venus flytrap will eat the flying penny, or 5p piece, drop that one as well. I feel perhaps after the third meal I'll have a little burp as well to show its appreciation. So there are some jokey ones as well, but certainly 2 or 3 of these are very sensible and practical and of great use in removing unwanted insects in the house. I'm keeping my eye on you. Well, yes. Big black dots on 2 yellow wooden balls. What's this for? It's actually a very curious spinning top. The physicists call it a cylindrical spinning top because it actually spins in 2 different directions at the same time. You'd expect it to spin like this, and spinning like that is the same thing. There's an axis here, but it also precesses around some imaginary axis here. It's called precession. When the 2 are combined, you get a very interesting effect. If it was only spinning like this, all you'd see would be a black circle going round and round. If it only span like this, you just see a slightly greyish yellow ball. But when you combine the 2 together, you get a very strange effect, which I'll try and do like this. The black dot slowly moves around, quite clear the black dot too, and slowly processes round through the circle. Sometimes it stays exactly still. This one here, that's very nice. So we're thinking of calling this curious object the precession of the equidots. Anyone for cards? If I were to ask you to pick up these 3 decks of cards, and then ask you to pick up the top deck, you would say, that's a lot heavier. How come? Then all 3 decks? That's lighter. And the top one again? That's a lot heavier. So what's going on? It's an illusion. A sensory illusion, hard to get across. So we thought we'd go out on location and see what the public thought of it, and the results were amazing. So all 3 very slowly, up and down. Yeah. Gravity again. Back down again. One foot again. Now just yes, put it down.
I presume that's a food.
That, but this is actually.
Wait a minute. Okay, now just the top one. Just the top one by itself.
People don't want to touch.
Become heavier.
It has.
All 3 decks to start with. That's 3 decks of cards there, okay? Up and down. You're just aware of it because you've got sensors in your arm to detect this way. Do it once more, all 3.
No,
Put it down.
what you're weighing, yes.
A minute. Okay. Now just the top one by itself. Feeling very heavy.
Suddenly much.
And we know there's nothing under the table, of course.
Now do all 3. Do one more. Both on generator. All three decks, very slowly up and down. Don't do it in a hurry.
So how does that?
And down again. Just follow gravity. All 3 decks. Okay, that's good. That's
Exactly
good.
how much they weigh.
Right, I'll just adjust it like this. Okay, now just the top bit myself. That is heavy, isn't it? Down again slowly. Pick it up once more, a little bit higher. So you're aware of the weight of the thing, okay? And now let me just adjust underneath. Okay, now just the top deck by itself. Just the top deck by itself. Ooh.
Ooh, that seems heavier.
Take it in by it, however it works.
Consistent.
Just light again.
It's amazing.
That.
It still feels the same.
It still feels that that is lighter.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Spooky, even. Somebody's just stolen my wallet.
It's all right. It's under one of these boxes.
Very good.
Very weird. I don't understand it. Right. No way. How can it be that heavy? You have to try it. It's amazing.
Out she goes, and what a view! Fantastic. A telescopic view of the Great Exhibition in 1851 in Queen Victoria, resplendent with an enormous crowd of people opening up, and it's all produced in this wonderful perspective idea where you've got all the depth planes, one after the other, making it look fabulously rich in three-dimensional detail. When you look through the peephole, it all comes into the right perspective. A very clever idea. Been produced several other times at different times, but it started really with the Victorians doing this. It's a wonderful optical toy, the telescope view. And it came with a nice box too. So interiors, that was the interior of the Great Exhibition, Crystal Palace. But coming right up to date, here's another interior. This is made in Mexico. It's made from bamboo, as you can see. It's got a little tag to hold it up, and inside, when you open up, surprise, you suddenly see a whole row of little scenarios, little vistas. It's actually religious and secular down in two rows. This is scenes from Mexican villages, and this is scenes from the Passion of Christ, from the Last Supper through to the crucifixion, coming into Jerusalem on the donkey. Lovely little thing to hang up on their wall to remind themselves of their culture. Also South America, but I picked up in USA, is this little charming little interior from El Salvador. It's made of a rather delicate porcelain, I think, or just china clay. It's very odd, very modern. It's a little scene of a businessman at the desk, or perhaps a receptionist, but all made out of superb detail, but quite delicate, because you can see the poor old businessman's lost his left arm here. But look at all the details, even to the tiny pins sitting in the pen holder on the desk. Quite extraordinary. And then put the tap back on, and he's closed up. The British got involved with sometime about the 1950s, I think it was. They made a series of interiors from these famous matchboxes. These were the non-safety matches. You had to strike it on a piece of sandpaper. An interior, where each of the three were the famous scenes of London landmarks. We've got the Westminster Bridge with the Tower, Big Ben. We've got the Tower of London and Tower Bridge. Made of plastic and a little bit cheapy perhaps, but I think the detail is very good, and also it's a very strong perspective by giving a slightly distorted picture. But look at it, especially with one eye closed, you definitely get a sense of a lot of depth in these. Just simple matchboxes made for the tourist trade. I wish they'd make them again. Coming right up to date, a friend of mine who I see every year at Nuremberg Toy Fairs, been there for 75 years he's been exhibiting, or his firm's been going, and he's produced a little version of himself in his workshop, making some of his lovely little wooden toys, all in a little interior. Very cute. Then there's some very nice scenes of nativity. This one is made from a piece of walnut, plastic on the front, but there's a little scene of Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus and a star above. quite nicely done. Then a much more exotic version of the Nativity is this one here from Austria, which is in a lovely floral box, very nicely made. And when you open it up, a big thrill. Look at that, superb. The stable is more like a little grotto underneath the village of Bethlehem, it looks like. But a tremendous amount of detail, and lots of flock and trees and houses and animals and the Holy Family in the base. Isn't that superb? A much more exotic and technical interior is this one from Japan called a H1Z1 box, which means really the cosmos in a cube, where you have a peephole here, you have a little bit of a pattern here, and all the rest of it is surface mirrors. When you hold it up to the eye, you get the most extraordinary detail of, it looks like great caverns or like cathedrals going into the distance at every angle. Quite incredible. The sense of space is extraordinary, but it's just done by reflections back and forward. Wonderful effect of optical. It's like a static kaleidoscope, but then you can make a bit of movement by putting your hand over the back and making shadows and light appear. But that is one of my all-time favourite optical toys, I think, the H1Z1 box. And the last interior is something that a friend of mine in the office, his wife was making them, and it's an egg, or two eggs actually. It's got an outer egg and an inner egg. The outer egg had little windows cut in it, the inner egg revolves, and she's painted pictures of birds. That one, and then another one here on this side, and you can see the same thing on the other side. But she's finished it off with lots of little fussy detail, like a little jewel on the top and whatever else. And it's very delicate, I've got to look after it very carefully, but I do treasure that. It's a very fine addition to my collection of Fabergé eggs. Here's a sand toy produced by the Wham-O Manufacturing Company in St. Gabriel in 1979. I bought it. A wonderful thing. They call it micronium sand, very, very fine particles. When you set it up like that so it's roughly level and hold it, there we are. The top sand now, very, very fine particles, slowly fizzes, losing the air and moving down and compacting. That's what you want, a bit of compaction of the sand. That's probably enough. Turn it upside down and watch the action. Breakthrough, we have a breakthrough, and another breakthrough, whoopee. There's an air bubble on the left, so that's going to break through. Oh, yes, down she goes, last little bit. Oof. Weird landscape you're left with at the end of it, strange stuff. This version they did was a luminous one. You could put this in a dark room, it would shine and glow, which is rather nice. The pink bit that glows. So a sand picture from Wham-O, 1979, the first sand toy I came across. So that's the subject of this little collection of sand items. If I go back to the beginning, which is this sand on the beach, the most spectacular picture I've ever come across was this one here, which was in the Times 1985 in Santa Monica, no, San Diego in California, and this was about 50,000 tons of sand. It took a few weeks to do, and look at the size of it, absolutely astonishing. And if you go on the internet, you'll find a number of wonderful sand sculptures, but that was probably the biggest sand castle in the world. There are people out there, you know, who collect sand, and this weird sort of sand which appears only in a few beaches around the Pacific Ocean is called star sand. It's the most coveted of all the sand that sand collectors look for. It's actually tiny little outside skeletons of minute creatures, but you can hardly see them because they're so small, and it only occurs in a very few beaches around the Pacific Ocean. Here's a picture of the sand when it's blown up. And this is the beach it came from, Okinawa Beach in Japan. Only perhaps half a dozen beaches around the whole of the wide Pacific have this peculiar type of sand. Very beautiful and very collectible. Sand does very strange things, and a fairly recent discovery of physics involves a magic sand wand, they call it. This is ordinary sand, it's been coloured blue, but this is a heavy ball bearing. If you turn it upside down, the ball bearing of course falls to the bottom, and there it's sitting at the bottom. And how can you get it up to the top again? The answer is you shake it. Very strange. If this was water, there's no way that ball bearing would come to the top. It would just stay at the bottom all the time. It's so much denser than it. But there we are, up at the top. Ooh, last few bits. How did it get up there? Extraordinary. It's much, much heavier than the sand, much denser. So how can that rise just by shaking it? Very, very clever. Well, it's buried in the sand, the answer. In my childhood, I came across a lovely art form which involved coloured sand at Alum Bay, and this is a very advanced version of it. And for this, what they do is you have to actually paint the inside of the bottle with a little paintbrush and some glue. And if you're doing, for instance, this palm tree here, you paint with this glue, which is not totally transparent, the actual palm itself. You then fill the whole bottle with black sand, wait for about a minute or two for it to settle, pour all the sand out again, except not all the sand comes out, a little bit adheres to the glue which is attached to the inside of the glass, and that's how they've managed to show that tree. Then you repeat them for all the other features of this bottle. It takes a bit of time, a bit painstaking, but you can do the most wonderful intricate pictures using glue and little fine brushes and getting the sand to stick to the inside surface. A very strange toy which appeared, I think, sometime in the 60s was this one here. It's called Night Out with the Boys. There's a bit of sand falling down. He's drinking the bottle of beer. What happens the next morning? The sand's gone down into here, and oh dear, yes, there's any more. It's given him diarrhea and the rest. Morning after. It's quite a nice but quite crudely done postcard from, I think, the 1950s, which I picked up in my early collecting days. A bit more tasteful now are sand toys which make wonderful patterns. There's 3 of these to show. That's the pattern that's going to appear eventually, but there's another pattern on the back which is now hidden. Turn it over, give a bit of shake to make it even, and stand back and watch. Out of the formless becomes form. Beautiful. Little squares, a series of squares with the sand falling down. And you can see the sand, if I turn it up like this, you can see the sand falling down onto the lower compartment. And now the picture's almost appeared. In fact, if I stayed still, that's the last bit to go in. In fact, you can complete it by giving a little shake like that, and instantly it disappears, but then reappears because the sand is now so thin. And you do that last few times, and it gets quicker and quicker, the time taken for the sand picture to appear. And the other way would produce the picture we've already seen. Here's another version of it. Again, a nice picture at the back, but the one we're going to see is going to appear after about 5 or 6 seconds. Little bridges, it looks like, columns. Sand falling down. This way like this. Be interesting to see the pattern on the other side. Well, we'll see that in a minute with another toy. And now the pattern it's intended is beginning to show. They're quite a little patient toy, but perhaps about a minute of running time, most of these, and they're finished. These ones were made by Nafe Company in the 1970s. I picked up 3 or 4 of them at the time. A more recent one, which I picked up in the mid-80s, was the Japanese one, which is a very nice idea. Turn it upside down, give it a little shake. What's the pattern that's going to appear? Don't know. It's going to be a mystery. In fact, this is supposed to be given to someone who's celebrating a birthday. So what appears there is, this way around, a birthday cake with stars around it. And just to convince you it is a birthday, turn it upside down for the second picture to appear. This one actually will spell out the cheerful greeting, because the letters are quite finely depicted. You have to wait until the last bit before it's reading happy birthday. Beautiful idea, this. So these are all dry sands. There is a type of toy which involves liquid as well. So here we don't have air, we have water, and then a black sand. And when you turn this upside down, and again the Nafe Company made this, you get some spectacular action here, because the sand, which is heavy, falling down through these holes, but at least one of the holes at any one moment of time is clear, because there's the liquid, the water, going upwards to replace it, and then we get spectacular eruptions like a volcano. Quite extraordinary. And you're left with a rather desolate landscape. I'd love to see that if they could ever make one in which involved the black sand, but also something which glowed, something which required ultraviolet, to make it look like a real volcano blowing up from its cauldron, producing hot magma. That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? So this is quite a brief one, and it's a two-way one because there's stuff falling down and there's eruptions occurring on top level. And at the end of it, you're left with rather stark couple of or three pyramids of blackness. Very strange. Quite watchable. Going back to dry sands again, and this air, there's this really quite nice one here, which I have a great fondness for. Turn it upside down, give a bit of shape to get the thing nice and level. And now the sand's going to slowly fall down. There's three compartments. Along here, there's three glass compartments separated by glass sheets. There's a sort of beige colour, which I'm nearest to at the back. And there's a red sand in the middle and a brown one at the front, which is the least amount because it'll make very low mountains. One curious feature of this, which I only noticed recently, is that the top ones, as the sand's falling down, makes quite sharp top edges, almost pyramids. The bottom ones are all nicely rounded hills, as if that's new and old geology or something. It's something very interesting. But again, that will go on for quite some time to get the entire contents from the top down to the bottom, and it won't all go until you give a bit of a shake. But a nice little relaxing thing to look at. Sand sculpture. The best of these, unfortunately, which I have to show another time, is this one here, which is dried out. This is what happens to your sand pictures when they're dried out. They don't perform. There should be water and soap in there, soap solution. When you turn it upside down, it does wonderful, spectacular stuff. But that's got to be recharged with water, as I've done for one of these. So the last one is a wonderful, wonderful stand toy which I bought in the late 70s, I think it was. It's a little acrobat. It's going to perform for us. But the modus operandi is not a wind-up, and it's not a motor. It's sand. There's the hopper. And the sand's got to be made to go up into the hopper, fall down onto this wheel here, which then makes the acrobat turn. To charge it then, we simply turn it around like this once, and give it a shake to go around the corner. And at the second time, give a shake to go around the corner, and that's filling up in that triangular hopper. One more time probably, and you'll have a nice long running time then. Shaking it gets round the hopper, that's probably enough. And now we'll see the sand falling down on the sand wheel, like a water wheel, and making the thing turn round and round and round. And what's happening in the front? Well, a nice one this. It's the acrobat performing. What else should you be doing? It's quite nice because it's random. There are sometimes when it does one or two flips. All the time it's happening, the sand is falling down onto the hopper and making the sand wheel rather than the water wheel turn round. And on the front you can see the wonderful action of a circus acrobat performing. Isn't that a nice idea? Sand, interesting stuff. The riddle of the sands, perhaps. What have we got here? A sand timer, but in a column of water. How strange. Turn it upside down and see what happens. And I've got a little timer here to set it and see how long it takes to fall through. Well, in fact, something much more remarkable than just the sand falling down is going to occur, because Martin Gardner wrote this up in 1966 in a column in Scientific American, and another friend, Scott Morris, wrote about it in 82 and got a most wonderful response from the readers. Gave them this theory and that theory about how it worked. There's a modus operandi which is very subtle. Something is going on there which is stopping the thing from rising, but we'll have a go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, half, and up she goes. Wow, why should it, what's the delay? Is it little bits of sand falling down with momentum stopping it from rising, or no, something much more subtle? A very clever little background to this, and I won't give it away, but something very subtle is going on there to cause it to delay its rising to the top. And here's a little trivial version of the same thing. It's a thing for writing short notes, I suppose. It's a little sand timer which doesn't delay when it stays at the bottom, just rises straight up, and it's got a pen to write with. But I think it's about 5 seconds, so you wouldn't get much written in 5 seconds, just a very brief note. A much more subtle use of sand timers is in this little thing here, which is a kind of Columbus egg. When you give it a little tap and stand back, and then a little bit of magic with the hands, abracadabra, and ooh, what happened there? Inside is the sand timer, but it's asymmetric, unlike the other one. There's a symmetrical bulb at the top, but the bottom one, as you can see, is D-shaped, and when the sand falls down, it displaces the central gravity and pulls the piece over, pulls the egg over. Very clever, very subtle. If you do a bit of abracadabra. Well, here's another version of the same thing, but produced in India. It's a little doll. And when she's placed on the table like this, and you wave your hands and say, "You are falling asleep, you," and down she goes. Very clever. Must be the sand. Must be the sand. More versatile sand timers with a bit of a tongue in the cheek, this one. It's a men's sand timer for housework. They turn it over to start the housework, get busy with the hoover, but oh, that's all right. Then 5 seconds later, it's back to the beer and sandwiches and television. It's a bit unkind on housewives, I think. But it's a men's housework timer. Takes about 5 seconds and it's finished. A very clever one, which came out only last year, we now have this on our website, is a sand timer-like thing. It's actually iron filings. There's a very strong neodymium magnet here. So the iron filings are attracted to it, and in a very, very beautiful way, they pick up the very strong magnetic field that's being emanated from the magnet and follow the lines of the radiating magnetic field. You're getting all sorts of wonderful stalactite things and sharp little needles all over the place. Wonderful sights. Very, very interesting appearance it makes. When it's finished, you just pick up the bulb, turn it over, and do it again. It'll do it any number of times. But it's suppose it's timing things as well. But a nice use of a sand timer. Then there's a very subtle one used as a magic box, a trick opening box. How do you open the box? I've covered it up with tape just to disguise it, but here's the core of it. There's a sand timer inside, and it rocks back and forward like this. So when all the sand's in the bottom hopper, it tilts over and forces this thing to sit like that and stops the lid from sliding off. It jams, this piece comes up. You have to hold the box for 20 long seconds in that direction like that, let the sand fall down, and then and only then does the little catch here will stay down and allow you to slide the lid off. So it's got its own little, quite crude but very effective time switch in a puzzle opening box. That's a nice idea. And then there's a delightful idea which I picked up about 20 years ago, I think it was. I saw it in a fair in Frankfurt in 1990, I think it was. It was a sand timer. Well, it's very slim, but what's happening here? Is the sand jammed, do you think? No, it's upside down. And oh, it's an upside down sand timer. What a lovely idea. Well, actually, what you're looking at is little particles of plastic, which are lighter or less dense than the water. This is not air, it's water, and they're just rising up to the surface. What a wonderful thing. But it's a little bit crazy for people who are trying to sort of imagine a normal world where things fall down. So if you really want to make it fall the other way, you'll have to stand on your head or wear upside down goggles, or perhaps we can ask the team to do something about turning the camera upside down and make it appear as though it's going the other way. Well, that's all right then. All is normal. Well, almost. Here's a very pretty version of the hurricane balls, but it's got 3 spheres, not 2 that we sell in the shop. There's a third one in the middle, of course, looks as though it's stationary, but it's actually revolving around very fast. It looks very pretty. Goodness me. It requires a lot of breath, this one, as do all the other toys that I've got on the table here. These all require a lot of breath, but that's probably the most spectacular. So here's one of the very first ones I bought in my collection about 40, 50 years ago. The idea is to try and get that little ball up on the hook by blowing hard, and the air current comes out, lifts up the polystyrene ball with the hook in it, and that's what you're supposed to do if you can get it up there. It's jolly difficult to do, but I'll have a go. Fit it in there, and oh, so nearly, not quite. Never mind, try again. Other ones don't require skill, they're just a bit of fun, such as this one here, which just needs a lot of blowing, and then you run out of breath, of course. In the early days, I came across this toy and found I could buy about 3 or 4 of them, throw away the other pipes, and just have one long, enormous piece of wool, and that made a spectacular effect. Wow, that's a good piece. Others are just a bit of fun. You have to blow hard and then see if the ball can land back on the plinth. That one didn't. Come down again slowly. There she's landed. Or a very sweet little one here, which requires a white ball, and that goes. The eagle has landed. There's much more sophisticated blowing things around. For instance, there are some mechanical puzzles, quite rare this is, where you're required to either blow hard or suck hard to make them operate. This one you've got to try and remove this brass rod from the middle. It worked about 40 years ago when I got it, but no longer works. I think the actual diaphragm inside, either leather or rubber, has perished. But I think you had to suck very hard and then it would come apart. There are still ones around which require either blowing or sucking. I can't say which because we have some on our website, or at least one, and let me give the game away. But there are some very clever ones around. Here's a whistle which I meant to show when I was doing whistle toys recently, but I hadn't got it at the time. It's a lovely idea called Whistle While You Work. There's a pen at this end, and this end is a swanny whistle. Or something. Yes. Then getting much more sophisticated is a lovely demonstration of physics, how you change wind power into electricity, which is happening on the wind farms. When I blow hard here on the propeller, it will turn and operate a little dynamo, and a lot of hot air to help global warming, I think. Nice one. Also, there's some very nice little optical illusions that can be done with air. This is the old thaumatrope. When you breathe hard, a heart appears. Well, this one, which is more mysterious because the two halves appear to be completely strange, and when you blow hard, they can merge and it becomes a 4-leaf clover. That's a nice one. There's a great number of spinning tops which I've shown before. This one is a typical blowing top, which you have to blow hard through it. And then there's little vanes on the outside here which allow the air to come out, and it picks up a good speed. Clever one. Then go back to my earliest toy collecting was this charming little toy which cost about 5p at the time, I think it was. A little parachute inside. When you blow hard, the parachute comes shooting out and lands on the ground. Have a go. Down she comes. Very sweet. It's only a little parachute like that, but it's a charming idea. Now here's getting very sophisticated. I think one of my favourite toys has been these little gadgets. This is not blowing from the mouth, but it's using still air to create a wonderful effect. If you light it up, it's even better. And then just recently I came across another version of this toy which adds another feature to it, which I think is beautiful. We've got a ball and a very light bowl, and when you push the button there's a strong updraft of air, and this rises very high indeed. And also when you put the ball inside the bowl, that will also work. Not so high because there's more weight there. Then very interestingly, you can have the things separated. You can have a ball and you can have a dish above it. That is quite extraordinary, isn't it? I wonder how it works. Well, I'm trying to imagine this as a kind of cone of air. I imagine there's a cone of air coming up, and when the ball's rising up and it's trying to come outside the cone, there's actually high pressure air pushing it back in again. Well, that's my way of visualizing it, but it's a very hard thing to visualize, the Bernoulli effect, but it's something I've always enjoyed, and that's a particularly fine version of it, I think. So there's plenty of air toys around there, and I think it's probably time for me to start playing with them. It's party time. Isn't that cute? Sharing a kiss. This is just the boy with the football cap who's doing the running too. Charming little automata which I picked up in 1978, put a little coin in it, they call it Love Bank, and they kiss, which is the object of today's little search of toys. Here's the one that I picked up about 10 years ago, I think it was. You pull them apart, this is wind up, not battery operated, and the boy's doing the running again. Bless me. Soft purring noise. There's a little eccentric motor inside when you pull them apart, and I can hear the noise on the table, and they come together. You've got to get your own noise, I guess. Here's another version of it, which I picked up in Australia. Again, pull them apart, and this is a bit noisier though. Woo! And they come together. My favourite one, though, was produced in the UK by a company called Bear in Rutland. Lovely sound. And this is a couple of fish sharing a kiss. What a smacker. That's superb, isn't it? He's got the motor, and she's got the mechanism for making the kiss, a little battery-operated chip. That is one heck of a smacker. Wonderful sound. Then other automatons which show kisses are manually operated. This one here is a little clothes peg, for instance. French, very austere, but wonderful design. So austere, in fact, there's no faces, but you don't need the faces because they're merging. Their faces are merging for a kiss. But nicely made as a clothes peg. Very simple, very austere, but I think it's effective. And another one which I picked up, and we did sell for a time, but I can't get any more. It comes from the Tyrol. It's an old design from 100 years ago. When you pull the lever, the young elderly couple have a good kiss, but they don't seem very happy about it, do they? Little lever at the back is all you need to do, and pulls the couple's necks up, and they come together and kiss. Strange stuff. Some of them don't have any movement, like this is, for instance, it just sits on the table. What is it? Turns out to be a condiment set. They're having an embrace, really. That's the pepper pot, and that's the salt cellar. It can be filled from the bottom. When people say, please pass us pepper or salt, you say, I'll send you the lovers, and across the table they go, as a pair. That's a nice one. There's a charming version of a Stanhope Peep, which has a kiss in it as well. It's called Secrets, the picture inside this. When you hold up to your eye, you see a tiny little picture which is magnified 100 times, and in it there's two young children sharing a secret, but they look as though they're just about to kiss or have just finished kissing, dressed in very nice Victorian clothes. Secrets, they call. They're sharing a kiss and sharing a secret, and produced in the form of a little castle. Very nicely produced version of the Stanhope Peep. Coming right up to date, we have many, many flick books which show action, and this one does show a kiss, but it doesn't quite sort of work out properly. Here's the Romeo serenading his lover. He's running across the ground to meet her, and what happens there? Nothing. He disappears. What's happening? He's running across. Oh, he falls down a hole. That's what it is, and she is oblivious, runs at him, past him. And what a sad denouement. Ah, well, that's life sometimes. Here's a carving which I've had on my mantelpiece for many, many years. I don't even put it amongst my toys. It's a kind of ornament, really. It's made in Russia, I think it is. Bears having a hug and a kiss, and you can make them look as though they're coming together like this. I love the simplicity and almost abstract imaging that's gone on here. Just a ring of wood depicts their two arms embracing. Two half rings show their legs. The only serious carving is in the heads, which is quite intricate, but it does produce the appearance of two bears having a kiss. I wanted to call it The Kiss, but unfortunately Rodin got there first with The Kiss. Haven't got this in my collection, not yet anyway. So I'm going to have to call this The Bear Hug instead. Ah, well. There's a French author whose work I love, but I can't get hold of his book, so this is just a photocopy I've made, Martha Sorrow, who does a series of pictures, each of which is a folded page with a denouement. This looks like two children looking very cramped in the train, but the reason they're cramped is in between them is a great big guy. And this looks like a young girl having a skip. And in fact, it's two girls getting a poor little boy tied up in knots. So his depiction of the kiss, which is a nice one, with two children sharing a kiss. In fact, they're attending the school medic, very boring, with the school doctors. But they look as though they're kissing. That's a nice transformation. Then for party going, you can buy one of these mistletoes. Well, you could 20 years ago now, I got it, I think. Little plastic mistletoe, but never mind, it won't be a plastic kiss. You put it on your head, and then you go looking for ladies to share a kiss with. It's right above my head. I'm waiting. And the last one to show is a beautiful little bit of automata from Spain, which I bought in 1980, I think it was. Two little bears, bear lovers. Wind them up. Incidentally, did you know that the KISS was an acronym used by the American Army in the Second World War, KISS? It was to help troops to have simplicity and clarity and brevity in their communication to make sure they got the message across. So KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, Sam. Or was it stupid? No, it must have been Sam. Good advice, good advice. Let's see if these two will get on with their kiss. Wow. So all the worlds are kissing. That's a great problem in life, to kiss or not to kiss. That is the question. Love and Love by Tommy. This is a 1970s marriage toy, and all these toys here are to do with weddings and marriages. So we start off with a rather poor start here. She doesn't look very happy and he's burst into tears. So we change the Wheel of Fortune, a little spring-loaded lever underneath, set it running and see if we can get a better outcome for this marriage. Love and love. Oh, well, that's half happy. She is, at least, but he's turned away. And so on. You can do a number of combinations of these things, and each time it'll produce a different picture. Nice idea, that. Of course, you must have wedding and engagement rings at weddings, so this one here would be a brilliant one for an engagement ring. Put it on your ring finger, and then say to yourself, well, actually, I prefer all diamonds. Well, no trouble at all. Just turn it inside out, and it transforms into another ring, all diamonds. If you prefer to go back to the emerald for another evening, that's the emerald ring. So that will be the engagement ring. And then for the wedding itself, we must have something like this, which is a happy, sad one. It's actually tragedy comedy from the theatre pictures. Spin it like that, and all marriages are happy and sad at different times, and you've just got the two scenarios on this particular ring. Suitable for a wedding ring? I don't know. Perhaps it's a bit too close to the knuckle. Here's a lovely idea for a little present for a wedding ring, for a wedding. This is a spoon, a Celtic spoon. We sell this on the website. And it's got a little peep in the top. Tiny little picture, magnified 100 times. And this one contains, because it's a marriage, of course, wedding vows. That's good. I take thee, my love, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, etc., etc. It's all there. Famous marriage vows taken on. A very upmarket wedding in America, and this is a lovely, lovely set of puzzle blocks, which are all pictures everywhere. And the idea is you scan them. There's the entire picture, and here's the wedding scene itself. And if you want to see what the presents they received, is you roll them this way, upwards. And if you want to see how the guests are enjoying themselves at the wedding, you turn them this way, and then they're all having a lovely dance, and so on. You can scan the entire picture. Very, very well constructed picture blocks, and it gives the whole scenario of their wedding and the party afterwards and the honeymoon and the rest. Superb. And we had a famous wedding in Britain in 1981, Charles and Diana, of course. And this is the one by Longcrane and Broxton. And instead of having ball bearings rolling around and you have to get them into the slots, this is diamonds. There's a set of diamonds to fit into Diana's tiara and some to go on as epaulettes. And there's one purple one here I noticed, which I think has to go here, which is probably Order of the Garter or one of those medals. That's a nice little dexterity puzzle, and you've got to move the pieces around and get them into the little holes. Also at that same time came a thing called a wedding puzzle with a rather nice little invitation to the wedding. The pleasure of your company is requested at the marriage of Lady Diana and Prince Charles and Buckingham Palace, etc. And, oh, coach is welcome, book early. That's nice to know. And what came underneath the card was a very nice little puzzle where you had to get the couple sorted out. They've got all parts of their bodies muddled up. And you did that by a series of, no, that's not right. No, that's not right. It's a lovely bit of paper holding this. I love this origami. Still not right. Are we there yet? Yes, there's a couple already, and when they announced their engagement. Here's an interesting thing. This is from Sevi. The company in northern Italy makes a series of nice little boxes like that with a mouse and popping out of the ground. Their take on the wedding, though, is a very curious one. There's the groom. When you pull this open, the bride pops out of the ground. Well, no, I think the idea is you hold it vertically like this, and this is Romeo climbing up to the balcony for his Juliet. Probably like that. And here, I think, is the priest who was marrying them a little time ago, and then popping out of the ground is one of his chums from underground. That's a very strange take on the wedding. There's some very nice cards, wedding cards out there. This is a beautiful one of the Bar and Press. We sell a number of different versions, but this one we don't have. It's a wedding and the aftermath, where they're both still a happy couple a few years later with a family, and a third one on the way, perhaps. That's a nice idea for a card. This one, I think, was possibly a Greek Orthodox card. It was one of those spreading out cards where you have to take the pieces, spread them out. There's the church. Here's the bride and groom. I think they have a large train of bridesmaids, and then some of these are with the guests and so on. It makes a beautiful big scenario of that. It's a nice idea for a wedding card. Who's getting married? Well, in this case, it's going to be Teddy and his bride. Oops, there's Teddy. And, oh, there's the bride. That's a nice thing, isn't it? A double jack in a box. Splendid bit of work. And I think when the wedding breakfast is over and the following day you stop having champagne and start drinking tea, here's a pot which says tea for two. So you put your 2 cups down there and you pour the tea for 2 people. Because they're a couple now, no longer single. That makes a nice scenario. This is a wind-up musical box which plays a nice little tune. And in addition to that, we can place this little creature on it and he'll start to rotate around the mirror. It's got a little magnet, of course. Quite a pretty little wedding tune, so let's see if we can get this well-known looking couple to start dancing to it. That's a nice 2 wind-ups working very well, both on the theme of marriages. That's nice. And now here's a thing called the Golden Ring. Big German product. Famous picture of Charles and Diana kissing. What's inside? It must be a nice ring, I think. Let's have a go. Open it up. What do we find? Oh, yes. Well, they often say it's like being handcuffed in a wedding, don't they? When you're married, but no, they don't fit me, I'm glad to say. Well, they fit you. Look at that. Set it spinning clockwise. It stops, rattles, and then reverses. The rattleback, sometimes called a celt. And I've been collecting these for many years. These are all rattlebacks doing different things. Well, all doing the rattleback, but with different principles in case. Here's a nice, smooth, beautiful one, but again, it rattles back. Beautiful. There's two ways of doing the rattleback. One is to have an asymmetric hull, it's called. Instead of going straight down the centre here, this has got an offset to the hull, an offset angle. It's got a bias to it, and that helps. That's what makes it perform. But you can also have a rattleback which is like a boat, but it's got a perfectly symmetrical hull, but has off-centre weights. And here you can see them clearly. They've been put on the top instead of in the middle. This will also perform as a rattleback, even though the hull is perfectly symmetrical. And here's one which is clever because it's got off-centre weights, but you can turn it over. So this way it's going to perform without rattling back. Turn it over.